Welcome to the Blue Fire Digital Network.
Welcome to the Godly Fathers Podcast, a podcast for young dads trying to live a godly life and raise godly children. I'm your host, Morgan Monroe. Let's get into the dad life. You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden, nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to the Father who is in heaven. That is Matthew 5:14 through 16. I was rereading the Sermon on the Mount earlier today. Felt like I just needed to kind of refocus on some things, and I thought that was like a nice word of encouragement that I could share with you guys today. And I've just had a hectic week, and I was kind of needing that refocus. So honestly, that's really all that this episode is going to be about. Is me telling you about the crazy week that I've had. And hopefully let you guys know what lessons I learned in that. Maybe it'll give some words of encouragement, if nothing else, but maybe maybe you'll learn something as well. But this will probably be a relatively short episode, so we'll just go ahead and jump into it. As always, I'll give a little bit of a baby update. My wife Jenna is now 29 weeks pregnant. So we're getting there. So our baby Maya, she is about 15 inches and 2.5 pounds. So, gain pretty big. She's at the size where like pretty much anytime she moves around at all, Jenna can feel it. And, I'm sure that's uncomfortable a lot of the time, but honestly, my wife is just such a good sport about it. Like she, thinks it's funny, and, sometimes she can feel Maya getting hiccups and stuff. It's just, it's cute. And Maya's also at the size where I can feel her moving too, which is really exciting and kind of brings into light how soon it really is that she's going to be here, and how much our lives are going to get flipped upside down. I mean, already, with her still being in the womb, it's very much like, oh, well, we still have so much to learn, so much to do to get ready, and our lives are already, kind of revolving around that. So, so let's start off with this crazy week. So, my wife and I decided to take a parenting class that the hospital that we're having our child was hosting, and it had a little bit to do with childbirth and what to expect in that, but it mostly had to do with just general child care. Within like the first almost year of having the baby. And my wife and I were actually kind of on the fence about whether or not we wanted to take the class, because we figured a lot of it's going to be common sense, and we're both pretty mature and responsible, and we're staying with my parents for a little bit, so we'll have them around to help. So we were kind of on the fence about whether or not we even wanted to take the class, but we kind of said, it's probably worth looking into. It wasn't very expensive, and it was only like a 3-hour chunk of our evening, so we decided it was worth it. And oh my gosh, I'm glad we did. There's just a lot of little things that you don't necessarily think about, right? Like, just an example. I won't go through everything. We learned a lot in that class. But just as one or two quick examples, as adults, I would like to shower every day if I can, and I think a lot of adults are like that. Some of us don't sweat as much, or whatever, so maybe we don't need to shower every day, but we try to stay pretty clean. Babies, though, apparently they just stay pretty clean on their own, which, makes sense. They're not really going anywhere, they're not working up a sweat. They're not rolling around in the dirt yet, so they're pretty clean. So, like, just a thing that I wouldn't have thought about is, one, you can't like give a baby like a real bath until they're like a couple months old. So you just have to like wipe them down and stuff. And then even then you can only give a baby like 1 or 2 baths a week because it'll dry their skin out too much. So, it's just like stuff like that like, I never thought about that. Or I didn't think that someone could be too clean, So, I guess the lesson that I would say here is, you never know enough, right? There's always something else to learn. And even if you think you're good, maybe you are, maybe you're pretty well prepared for whatever it is. And this doesn't necessarily have to do with just parenting, but, think about like in music, right? I feel like I'm a decent songwriter. I'm not the best guitar player, but I'm a decent songwriter. But there's always something new I could learn, right? And that will then apply to making me better. You're never the best version of yourself. The hope is that you're just always learning and getting closer to that best version of yourself. And I think that's really important when it comes to things like parenting, because obviously that's going to affect how that child grows up. So, anyone who is expecting a kid, even if you're on the fence about it, I recommend just taking a couple classes, because it'll definitely help you be more prepared. And a lot of it is just common sense. But for those things that aren't necessarily common sense, you'll want that. And then anything that you probably already knew, it'll just be nice to hear from a professional that you are right. So, that's that for you. Now, if that was the end of a crazy week, I don't think that would be worth making a podcast about. That would probably just be me saying at the beginning or end of an episode, like, hey, just so you know, this is something I would recommend doing. No, unfortunately, that was like the easiest part of of the week. So a few days later, I'm at work and I get a call from my mom that my wife is in the hospital. And she had not been feeling very well for a couple days. And I think it was like mostly a cough, but like she just wasn't feeling her best. And so she finally just decided she was going to go to the doctor. But she got there and her heart rate was really high and her blood pressure was really low. And that's kind of, I guess, normal-ish when you're not feeling well, and it's normal-ish when you're pregnant. But I guess the numbers even then were like pretty off of what you would expect. So her doctor was just like, you should probably just go to the ER. So, but I didn't necessarily know that. I just got the call that she was in the ER, and if I could get off work, I should come see her. And so I was like rushing back and keep your priorities straight. Like work is work, but your family is your family, and make sure that while work is important, leave work if someone's in the hospital. Your work will get over it. But what ended up being wrong was she had an infection in her kidney that I guess things like that are not like super uncommon. Just when you have a baby and your hormones are out of whack, it causes weird things to happen in your body, obviously. But it taught me to a new level of respect that I had for my wife. Like, obviously I respect her. I love her to death, but she was just so strong, and rolling with it, and a good sport. And I was proud of her. She handled the situation the best she could. And, they got an antibiotic in her pretty quick, and they kept us overnight at the hospital, just to make sure that, the antibiotic didn't upset her, the baby, in any way. And you already can't really sleep very well in a hospital. I don't know if you've ever had to stay the night in one. It's already not fun, but it's a little worse when the doctors are popping in every 45 minutes to make sure baby's okay. But we're just so thankful for that being the worst of it. And, the next day after we had got home and, she's staying on her antibiotics and she's, up and around again and feeling a lot better. We're just thankful that, it wasn't something worse and that, it didn't hurt the baby in any way. But the lesson I want to share with that is be ready for changes and be on your feet and be ready for anything that life throws at you. Because we really are at the point where if Maya was going to come prematurely, we're kind of there. Like it could be any day. And something that even since then, in the last couple of days that my wife has noticed is that the baby has been very active, and she's starting to get the concern that like they might be mild contractions, which doesn't necessarily mean much at this point. However, if they start getting too close together, or they get more severe, then that could be like, all right, back to the hospital. Baby's coming early. And there is a little bit of that in our families, and I think it's a little extra on our minds because a couple of her friends had babies prematurely, so it's just something we have to be ready for. But it doesn't even necessarily have to be ready to adjust for that. Life is going to throw things at you, and you're not going to be prepared for it. We spend all this time planning things in our lives. Don't get too upset if things change. Which kind of leads into the last thing that I wanted to talk about today, which was, for those of you who don't know, I'm the frontman for a Christian metal band called Tundra. And we were supposed to have a show yesterday, so the Sunday before this episode comes out. And we kind of we ended up having to drop the show last second. And it's kind of a long story, so I'll kind of spare the details, but it majorly frustrated me, in the sense of like, if I had known all of the details of why we had to drop, if I had known everything earlier than I found out, basically coming down to if people just communicated better, we probably could have still done the show. We could have figured something out. Like things would have had to change, but we probably still could have performed. Which it is kind of like it's just one show, but we had to drop our last show too. And it was hard for me to process in the sense of we had a really good start to the year. We had a couple really sweet shows. We were playing with bands like Convictions and Mouth Breather, and getting some really cool shows. And progress on our album was going well. We were selling merch. Things were going well. But then the summer hit and basically like everything halted. We had to cancel a show. We weren't practicing much. The mixing process on our new album basically came to a halt. And then our show that was supposed to be a couple days ago, we ended up having to drop. Now I ended up still going to the show and still having fun, just watching the other bands. But it's been hard, cause I really do feel like that, my band is something that I'm supposed to be doing. It's not necessarily something that I want to make a job by any means, like it's not something that I see that as a realistic option, but it's something that really mainly because, especially with the baby on the way, I don't ever want to get to a point where we're a band that plays, on the road for 8 or 9 months out of the year. Like that's not something I'm interested in. I don't want to spend all that time away from my baby and missing all of the awesome moments. And I just don't want that, but I do still feel like that, this is something I'm meant to do. So, I was just really frustrated basically. And, kind of shout out to Hunter who, from Blue Fire Horizon, Blue Digital, Blue Fire Digital and the War is Everything podcast. He's been really good about just being a bro. He's always just checking in on me and my wife, and giving a little bit of advice. He's not a lot older than me, but he's just farther enough in life than me that he always has at least a little bit of advice to give. So it was something he had mentioned to me, was it's important to focus on why we do the things that we do, and to stay worshipful. The specific example he used was we use music to worship God. If we lose that, if we lost our ability to play music, would we still worship? And that says a lot about the heart. And that was kind of why I was reading out of Matthew today. I feel like the Sermon on the Mount is great. I specifically love the Gospels in general, the first 4 books of the New Testament, and I think they're just good to just reread every now and then. I try to read them every year, every other year, something like that. But I felt like I just needed that to kind of refocus, because the thing is like, yeah, it's been a stressful few months for me, musically, but it's not going away. And so it's important that I remember that the reason I do this it's not necessarily for me. Yes, it's fun for me. It's something I enjoy doing, but it's something that I'm doing for other people, and I'm doing it for God. And that's why I do it. So that's kind of all I had for this episode. I wanted to keep it kind of brief, but speaking of Hunter, one of the other things that he and I talked about recently was, he's got a very different family dynamic than I do. And I'm sure a lot of the people listening to this, you guys probably all have a different family dynamic than I do. So we're going to try to get him on here either the next episode or the episode after that. And kind of flesh that out and give some more advice, and hopefully I can learn something, and hopefully you guys learn something too. But that's kind of where we're at. I hope you guys have a great next couple weeks. One other thing, if you are not following us on social media, on Facebook and Instagram, make sure you do so. And then I also want to ask you guys, so let me know if you're, I don't think you can comment on this on any of the streaming sites that it's on, but let me know on social media. Either message me or leave a comment on the post where I posted this episode came out. Would you like it if this podcast was on YouTube? And I could do it audio only. I could add video if you guys wanted for some reason. Or I could just do video on, episodes where it might matter, and just have audio otherwise. But would you guys like it being on YouTube? Because I know that, we're not on every streaming platform, and because we're a newer podcast with a smaller audience, that the algorithm kind of pushes us down a lot, whereas more or less everyone has YouTube. So if that's something that you guys would be interested in, let me know. But that's all I had for you guys on this episode, so I hope you have a great couple of weeks, and I will see you guys later. Thank you for listening to the Godly Fathers Podcast. If you'd like to support the show, head over to anchor.fm/the Godly Fathers Podcast to make a donation. Make sure to follow our podcast and leave a positive review, as well as share it with a friend who you think might like it. You can keep up to date with us on Facebook and Instagram at the Godly Fathers Podcast. The song used in the intro and outro of this podcast is The Pit by my band Tundra. And until next time, have a great couple of weeks, and God bless.